Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Zen Honeycutt of Moms Across America. This is our Monday night Moms Connect call, and this is February 3rd, 2020, and we are going to be talking about glyphosate and also 5G tonight and some major issues going on with the EPA. We've had some very eventful week, both politically, which we're not really going to get into, but also, environmentally and some other things. So we've got a bunch of things to cover, but first I'll mention that our mission is to educate and empower mothers and others with actions and solutions to create healthy communities. And we are constantly thinking up new ways to do that. We are moms. We will try anything, and we will try new things all the time. So we're continuing to look at that. If anybody ever has any ideas on things we can do, we may rope you in to help us do them. But we are always open to new ideas, and we're cooking up some right now. We're going to have some meetings with our board, and we're going to be looking for feedback. One of the things that I would like you all to be thinking about, and I'll ask you again towards the end of the call, is what organizations would you like Moms Across America to work with? Like, what are your favorite? If you think of them, just jot them down, and we'll come back towards the end. What are the organizations that you look to for actions and support and ways to, like how to get things done in your community, especially around health? Right. So I'll come back to you guys towards the end with that. But before we get into the 5G thing, we're going to have our special guest, Theodora Scarato from Environmental Health Trust back again. She was with us last week, and it was a great call, and people requested that we do more about 5G. But before we get into that, because she can't be with us until 5:30, we have a bunch of stuff to cover. So I've got some good news, some bad news, and then also a really super duper win. So I'm going to share first a little, well, this is not really good news, it's just sort of news. We don't know for sure or not if it's good news or not, because we don't know if they're actually going to do it. But Bayer is considering pulling Roundup from retail stores, which would make it so that your neighbor can no longer spray Roundup next door. So that would be pretty awesome. We got to keep it in perspective that the amount that is used by our neighbors is actually quite small compared to the amount that's used in agriculture. I have here on, on our blog about the EPA epic fail, which we'll get into more later. It talks about the amount that's used. So 281 million pounds of glyphosate were applied to 298 million acres annually on our agriculture. But only 24 million pounds is used on non-agriculture, and only 5 million pounds of that is, applied through the homeowner market. So out of 281 million pounds, they're really only talking about taking 5 million pounds off the market. So, not really great news. It's a tiny, tiny bit good news, but so it does mean though that if you're, walking down the sidewalk with your dog, that your neighbor won't be spraying Roundup right near you or right before you've walked there. So that's what I have about that right now. They are in settlement talks. The former CEO of Monsanto, Hugh Grant, unfortunate name, but Hugh Grant was supposed to take the stands this past week. That has been delayed because they're in talks. And when we all know it was very convenient that let's see, hang on a second. The EPA has decided to that glyphosate is not carcinogenic. Right. So this is the article called EPA Epic Fail. Epic EPA Fail. If you have not seen this article, I do suggest you review it, because I assessed the 37-page document that the EPA put out last, I think it was Thursday or Wednesday, about glyphosate down to it's a little bit less than 7 pages. And you don't need to read all 7 pages, but the summary is right here at the top. And And it's important because you should all know what the EPA is doing, and, you know, and what they're deciding around glyphosate, just so that you're, you know, like there's some articles that are out there saying, oh, the EPA approved glyphosate. No, that's not true. They're not done with it. It's an interim determination. And one of the reasons why we believe they are dragging things out and saying that this is only an interim determination, because I think they know that as soon as they make a final decision, they're going to get sued. So they're dragging it out so that they don't get sued. And also they're putting out the information that's the most important for the Monsanto lawsuits, right? Like they came out with this, oh, we have given a final assessment on human health risks and cancer, right? They've only assessed that one part of it. And what they say is the EPA, they wrote thoroughly assessed, but in my summary of their summary, I only wrote assessed because they didn't thoroughly assess. They did not review 67 of the studies that the International Agency for Research on Cancer reviewed, which found 82% of them found glyphosate to be genotoxic, which is carcinogenic. Okay, so they conveniently ignored those 67 studies. And so when they say they thoroughly assessed the risks to humans from exposure to glyphosate from all registered uses and all routes of exposure, and did not identify any risks of concern, including cancer, they're lying, because they didn't thoroughly assess, right? They did not review those 67 studies that the International Agency for Research on Cancer reviewed and did find glyphosate to be carcinogenic. So this is an outrage that our EPA is clearly in the pockets of the corporations. My summary that I sent out to press was the EPA's findings that glyphosate exposure does not cause any health risks is a blatant act of reckless endangerment to public health. Americans should be outraged, not just because our EPA is not protecting us, but because our government is allowing the collapse of democracy by pandering to corporate greed. You know, this is what's happening. Clearly, our regulatory agency is captured by the corporations, and they're simply speaking the words of the corporations, right? It's coming out of the EPA's mouth, but it's really, you know, very carefully written by Monsanto and Dow and DuPont and Bayer. So just a few more points about this, you know, just really just tragic news. The EPA did not review any cumulative health impacts of glyphosate, and they did this because they didn't find glyphosate to be toxic. And they found glyphosate not to be toxic because they only look at the short-term health impacts of glyphosate. They don't look at the long-term health impacts. And that means only within 96 hours is what they look at. And they also do not look at glyphosate herbicide's final formulation, right? So this means they only look at one ingredient, which is glyphosate, and glyphosate is never used alone. So this assessment, we have to be really clear about this when your landscapers say, oh, well, but we can use it because the EPA found it to be safe. No. They found glyphosate to not cause cancer all by itself within 96 hours, right? They didn't find the final formulation to be safe, which is all of the different chemicals. There could be 50 different chemicals in glyphosate. Some of them have been found to be arsenic and heavy metals, right, which we know are toxic. So the EPA did not find glyphosate herbicides, how it's used in its final formulation, to be safe. It's never been approved, right, with long-term animal studies showing blood analysis. They have never done that. In fact, the lead toxicologist at Monsanto says, oh, they said in the trial, but we can't test glyphosate on animals because it destroys their stomach linings, right? I mean, glyphosate herbicides, the final formulation. So they know that glyphosate herbicides destroys the stomach linings of the rats, so they die. They don't study glyphosate herbicides on the rats because it kills them. And yet they're allowed to spray this on our food, right? So it's total insanity happening at the EPA. Also, the EPA did reduce the list of the crop types with allowable levels of glyphosate from 160 down to about 15. I say about because they haven't included wheat and oats yet. However, the crops that were removed, likely they didn't use glyphosate anyway, like, I don't know, avocados and passion fruit and mangoes and things like that. They likely did not use glyphosate on those anyway. So it's no big concession. The EPA still needs to respond to the petition from the EWG and other food companies. I believe Ben & Jerry's and Mega Foods and stuff like that was involved in giving a petition to the EPA asking them to discontinue the use of glyphosate on oats and wheat as a drying agent, because very high levels were found in oats and wheat according to their testing, and which we've known for years, by the way, but at least the EWG finally got together over 40 tests, which is statistically significant. So they were able to show, this was of great importance and get the EPA to consider this. So when people want to know why more testing isn't done, it's expensive. And to have testing done that is really recognized by the EPA and CDC and FDA, you need 40 of them. That's a statistically significant number. And when you're looking at tests that cost $375 each, plus buying the samples and all that, it can add up very quickly. So that's why when people ever have a problem with, like you see on the side of my screen, you see that we have health solutions for sale here. That's what part of the money goes towards. We need money to do our jobs and to get testing done and programs and, pay people to do things. So I hope people don't have a problem with us selling health solutions. We are very careful about what we sell, but that's the fundraiser for us. Instead of selling calendars as a fundraiser, we are selling products which have been shown to make a difference for people's health. So anyway, that's a sidebar, but we would like to do further testing. The EPA says that they will do further assessments on the impact of glyphosate on bees and endangered species due to the Center for Biological Diversity's mitigation. So that's another place where it really is important to support organizations that want to sue the EPA, because that takes a lot of money, and it's really one of the most important things that we can do. Lawsuits in the end may be one of the only ways that we actually get our government to take any action. So supporting organizations that are going to do lawsuits is super important. The EPA is limiting the amount of glyphosate used per acre by category of use in order to prevent further weed resistance. But the amount that is they're limiting it to is still a huge amount. It's like 88 pounds per acre for forestry. And what's used in farming is usually about 1 pound. And the limit that they've allowed is 3.7 pounds in food, food crops. So food crops around 3.75 pounds, maybe with a total per year of 6 pounds, but in forestry, they can use 8 pounds per acre. And so that's an awful lot, according to the farmers that I've talked to. They also are requiring an additional labeling for aquatic use, which warns of fish kill from the lack of oxygen from the water vegetation that's dead. I don't know why I wrote dead water vegetation. Yeah, okay, yeah, so dead water vegetation. But it was very cleverly worded. The wording says that, when the water vegetation is killed, there's a lack of oxygen in the water, which then kills the fish. So they don't say that glyphosate kills the fish, right? They say that glyphosate kills the weeds, and then the lack of oxygen then kills the fish. So they are extremely careful in their wording to not point out that glyphosate kills anything except for weeds, right? So that is the good thing about this, though, is that when residents of an area start seeing dead fish, right, like in Florida, there's tons of them, they'll be able to point out to the user that, look, you were warned that using this kills the weeds, which then, can kill fish. You might be able to use that as a reason to not have glyphosate used in the water. And so, that is something that the land management or water management people will have to consider, right? They'll have to know that they are responsible for the fish kill when that happens, if and when that happens. But one thing I want to backtrack to for a second is the weed resistance. The weed resistance is really interesting, because if you think about the fact that over 255 weeds have evolved to resist glyphosate, doesn't that mean that weeds can resist glyphosate naturally? It's something that occurs naturally in nature. Then why would they be able to get a patent, right, for something that's genetically modified to resist glyphosate if it's something that can actually happen naturally in nature? Why would they be able to charge 375% more for corn and soy, right? That's genetically engineered to resist glyphosate when actually there's plenty of weeds, plants now that can resist glyphosate naturally. I would think that would be a good reason for not allowing patents of plants that resist glyphosate, because it is something that can happen naturally, right, in nature. I'm going to stop sharing for a second because somebody's chatting and I want to know. Yeah, because they can, right? So yeah, Eileen asked, is there a connection between glyphosate usage and the California fires? There have been articles saying that there absolutely can be a connection, because what happens is when they dump, many pounds of glyphosate over land that has just cut down a bunch of trees, they dump glyphosate on because they want to prevent new growth that would choke out the growth of their trees, right? They go back in and they plant trees a couple weeks later, and they don't want new growth to have already grown so high that when they plant a tree, it gets overcrowded from the new growth. So they spray glyphosate to prevent any new growth, and they spray it over millions of acres of lumbered forest where they go in and clear cut. And the problem with that is that it does get into the trees and the undergrowth, and it weakens the plant, just like it does with any other crop. It is a chelator. It chelates out the vital minerals and nutrients of any living plant, so of any living thing. So the plant can become drier and weaker than normal. And when there is a fire, it can then spread much faster. I mean, you've basically got like tinder, all across the country. And then when they spray glyphosate just to kill, the underbrush and stuff like that, then you've got a bunch of dead plants just waiting to burn. So it can be connected to the fires. Oh yeah. Also, Anne is saying they're also destroying the the fungal mycorrhiza, the fungal network, which is something which helps the trees to be stronger and to support each other. And that mycorrhizal, the fungal network, is really important in crops as well. What happens with a lot of crops is when a fungus comes into one end of the crop, by the time it gets to the other end of the crop, the plants, the mycorrhizal system, the little fungi in the soil have talked to each other, and they've actually told the crop on the other side of the field to get stronger and to whatever it is, to draw whatever they need out of the soil to resist that fungus. So naturally, when crops are grown naturally, a fungus doesn't usually take over the entire crop, right? It will only get part of it because the crop actually builds up its immune system somehow and resists the fungus. However, with monocrop cultures, and this has been stated by people from the home security, Homeland Department of Security, they've said, oh yeah, monocrop cultures are one of the most dangerous out there, because when a fungus attacks it, it can't resist it, right? And that's part of the reason, is because the mycorrhizal has been destroyed, and also because they're basically like cloned plants, right? Their immune systems are weaker because they're spraying glyphosate on them. So the farmers, in believing the GMO, claims, they're really doing themselves in. They're really causing the very problem that they want to try to resist, which is they're causing a weaker crops, poor soil, lower soil quality, less nutrient dense crops, more fungus, more weeds, more pests, and it really is a problem. Monocrop culture is just a serious problem for us. Okay, so let me finish with just a few more notes about what the EPA said. So I talked about requiring additional labeling for aquatic use. And then just to wrap it up, the final decision will be made about glyphosate after the desiccation of wheats and oats determination is made. That's the one regarding the EWG. Also, they're going to do an endangered species review, but they don't have to have that done until August of 2021. So don't hold your breath, folks. It's going to be a whole nother year and a half, likely, which is way too long and absolutely ridiculous. They've already been reviewing glyphosate for over 10 years. And then there's an assessment of endocrine disruption, which needs to happen, which is required. It's part of their review. Now, the thing about this is that, again, if they were just considering the final formulation, we would have much more evidence, right, for endocrine disruption. Glyphosate by itself, frankly, I don't know enough about this, but I don't think there's like tons of studies to show endocrine disruption all by itself. But with the final formulation, much more likely. The problem is they don't consider that. So this could be a long time before we actually get a determination out of them. Any questions about or comments, if you want to say, about the EPA decision? So what happens to the fulvic humic acid from the forest floor that feeds the oceans? Yeah, so glyphosate destroys the soil, all many of the good things in the soil. Frankie's saying that we just learned from Bill Gates learned that Bill Gates is working with Monsanto and Syngenta and buying up huge tracts of agriculture real estate in the US, especially in Georgia and Florida. Yeah, well, it's no secret that Bill Gates has been supporting GMO work and vaccines, right, for a long time. He's very much bought into this whole concept of Healthy People 2020, which is by this year. They wanted everybody vaccinated, and they want to feed the world with GMO crops. And I have witnessed this myself by going to the Norman Borlaug Norman Borlaug dialogue. Norman Borlaug is the guy who really pushed the green agriculture movement back when they wanted, GMO corn to be fuel, right? And so they really pushed monocrop cultures and huge farms, just exploded all over the U.S., buying up small farms. So it's a big festival. It's basically a big GMO love fest, right? And they just, extol the benefits of not only GMOs, but of vaccines. Chelsea Clinton was there talking from the Bill and Clinton Foundation, and a woman named Pam Anderson was there from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And they would talk about GMOs, and then they would talk about how great vaccines are. It was very weird because it was not a vaccine conference. It was really very strange. And by the way, also Google was there, right? So they're all on the same board on the same panel together, where they took away the mic so that nobody could get up like me and ask questions. They only received questions by Twitter, so they could prevent us from speaking up. It's very clever. Okay, so now I'm going to share a little bit of, so we talked about, oh no, I didn't get to the good news. So there was some good news. Okay, let me share some good news. Some good news is that Massachusetts passed the Agriculture Committee passed 2 bills restricting glyphosate use. So if you don't have bills in your state, this is something that you can do. You can get together with some other people who have written bills before, or some consumer advocates, and find out how to put together a bill. Maybe study the bill that Massachusetts has put together. And there's 2 bills. One eliminates the use of toxic pesticides, all of them, on playgrounds and anywhere that children learn and play. So that's fabulous, makes a lot of sense. And the other one, H792, takes all glyphosate-containing herbicides, including Monsanto's Roundup, off the hardware store shelves and ends consumer use of this toxic biocide. So, these bills do face an uphill battle before passage, and they're not guaranteed to be voted on, by full legislators, but they did pass through the committee. And if you guys want to find out more about what they're doing, I'm looking, it's probably like NOFA, which stands for Northeast Organic Farmers Association of Massachusetts are the ones that have, here's their nofamass.org newsletter. You can find out more about, what they're doing there. They're doing some great things. Washington State is also doing some great things. There's a woman there that's working really, Cindy Black, that's working really hard to get money out of politics. And so they're making a lot of progress. And what we'll do is have more people on our Moms Connect calls and, doing Facebook Lives about the good things that they're doing, right? So we'll find out more about what they're doing, and maybe it'll inspire people like you to take on having a bill passed in your, or present a bill in your area too. And keep in mind that the people that are presenting these bills, a lot of them have never done this before. Pam Larry, that put together Prop 37 GMO labeling bill, she had never done anything like this before. She just studied for a while. She just went online and researched. She called people. How do you do this? You don't have to, know how to do this in order to get it started. You just need to be determined to be the one to make it happen. Okay. So before I see that Theodora's on, but before we have Theodora share, I want to share something that I think is a super duper win for us. And so I'm going to share the screen. Just a second. If you did not watch the Super Bowl, one of the main reasons why I watched it was for this.
America, less than 1% of our farmland is organic. And farmers who want to transition face monumental challenges. What if we could help them? Simply by having a beer. Michelob Ultra Pure Gold introduces 6 for 6 pack. Pick up a 6-pack. It'll help transition 6 square feet of farmland to organic. So imagine all people might go for a 6-pack. With this, you can go organic. If everyone moved like inventory, all of this can turn organic. 6-pack, 6 square feet. And if every football fan picks up a 6-pack, we can change America's organic farmland forever.
Pretty awesome, right? That was seen by millions of people, hundreds of millions probably of people, just highlighting the importance of going organic and transitioning farmers. This was just a huge win for us. I'm so happy that they did this. It's not tons of acreage that will be transitioned to go organic. 6 square feet is not a whole lot of square feet, but it is something, and it's really just, I think I have to, say it's already 7 million views in the past 2 days. Really, really a huge deal. So if you guys can share that commercial around, I think it's a very big deal that they're, and saying I'm going to start drinking. I know, yeah, Frankie's saying she almost fell off her chair. I know I have another friend who was like crying and screaming and texting me, it was really fantastic. And, it's just something that goes to show that consumer pressure actually works. And the more that you speak up, the more that you buy organic, the more that you send the message to these major corporations that, this is what we want. So yes, the beer is organic. The beer is organic, and a portion of the money goes towards transitioning farmers to organic. So I think that's a big deal. All right, well, anybody have any comments or any other questions? You can just raise your hand. Most everybody's muted, I think, because of background noise, but so Thomas is asking if it's real organic. Yeah, so the only way you'll really know is if you take your beer and get it tested for glyphosate. There has been organic that has been contaminated with glyphosate, but it was very, very small amounts, and it wasn't all of the organic beer that we tested. And some of the farming, yes, organic farming has been corrupted, but most organic farmers are doing the right thing out there. Most organic farmers, if you interview them, if you talk with them, they are really interested in, farming in a way that benefits the earth and the soil and regenerates the soil. So some good things are happening out there. All right, well, I'm going to unmute Theodora, and Maybe I did it and you did it too. Go ahead. You can unmute yourself, Theodora. Great. And why don't you can you just introduce yourself real quickly, because I don't have your bio up in front of me, and then we'll get started.
So my name is Theodora Scorato, and I'm Executive Director of Environmental Health Trust. And we are a virtual scientific think tank. We publish research, educate policymakers all over the world, and all of that's on our website on ehtrust.org. And we also develop educational campaigns for people on how to reduce personal exposures to radio frequency wireless radiation, as well as information on what's happening around the world, where entire cities, I think my count is now at 142 cities in Italy, have opposed 5G. The French government health agency is now doing an investigation on this, as have several other countries. But the French ANSYS is actually one which we believe will do a better job because of what they've done in the past in terms of protections for consumers. And we're also just filed litigation against the FCC for stating that they don't need to change our 24-year-old limits, allowable limits on wireless radio frequency from wireless, be it your phone, be it the cell towers. It's outdated, based on outdated science, and there's so much industry influence. Same story as Roundup, glyphosate, asbestos, lead. It's the same story, only I would say that the wireless industry makes, and actually Lloyd Morgan, one of our engineers, coined this. He said it makes big tobacco look like a mom and pop shop. Mm-hmm. What we have going on.
Yes. And in 1986, I think it was, Bill Clinton passed a law which allowed telecom industries to come into our towns and counties and install whatever they want. They made it so that our towns and counties could not ban installation. Is that correct, Theodora?
Well, it was in 1996, he signed the Telecom Act.
1996.
Said, okay. Yeah, and it said that, so the first cell phone came on the market, I think it was like 1983, and they didn't even have regulations in place. It was the most, and I think it actually still is the most heavily lobbied bill ever at the time. And it said that environmental concerns cannot be used in the siting of the towers. Now that has been interpreted by case law in some circuits to mean health concerns. So when you go to your elected officials, they say, and you talk about the health issue, because 5G is going to increase the radio frequency radiation and add all kinds of new frequencies and new kinds of technology.
Not to be used lightly. It's not about becoming a tourist on the astral plane. And as
sorry, somebody's got something that needs to be muted. Okay.
That's good. So, okay. So that is a roadblock that citizens who are raising this issue come to. I mean, we believe that is an overreach of the statute. And there have been a lot of attempts to take down Section 704. It's Section 704 of the Telecom Act, to rewrite it. However, that has not been successful in the past. It can be successful in the future with enough grassroots organization. But, we believe that and advocate for people to talk about not it as even a health concern, because it really isn't a concern, it's a reality. It's a reality that the radiation will be increased. It's a reality that the science has shown damage this is not just to people, this is to animals, bees, pollinators. There's research on damage to trees. Every part, oxidative stress, which would increase our, really decrease our ability to defend ourselves and our bodies to be resilient against many illnesses. So So there's a lot happening on the 5G front at every level of government. I know if are you in California? Or people are from all over?
They're from all over. Yeah. We've got people even from Canada on tonight.
So what, and in Canada too. So what India, I mean, well, actually something India did is interesting, but in the United States, over 20 states have state streamlining bills. Streamlining meaning making it easier to put these installations in your front yard, in your right of way, near your homes, near your schools. And you can't really, you're very limited in what you can do because all the local authority has been stripped away in, I think it's 21 states now. In California, the same kind of bill was passed, a state streamlining bill, but the governor vetoed it and did not sign it. So in Maryland, we fended it off for, I think it's been 3 years now. And it will come, every year it will come back. So if you don't have one now, it will be in your legislature soon. And there are, gosh, in the United States, many cities that are passing local ordinances to have more authority, to be able to say, you know, everything from setbacks. Like we want a setback from the antenna, which the antenna installation, it could be multiple antennas, which will be on your light pole in front of your house, on your utility pole, and if you have undergrounded utilities, they will build a pole to put it on that will go in your front yard within feet of your home. So, and at the federal level, they're stripping authority too. The FCC has been stripping everyone's authority from the federal level as well. And there have been court cases happening on that as we speak. So.
Yes, so we really thank your organization. Also, is for filing that lawsuit, is that a different lawsuit from what the Children's Health Defense has filed?
Yes, we filed, they're probably, we're going to expect several, actually.
Great, that is really good to hear. Yay, there is some good news. We've got good news. There are at least two lawsuits that have been filed, and we expect more around 5G, right? I saw Mercola put it.
Interveners.
More what?
Interveners. Groups that will be intervening, meaning
okay.
If they didn't file now, they will be intervening and filing amicus briefs. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Maybe Moms Across America can help with writing one of those. We've done that before with somebody. So
yeah. I mean, the synergistic effect alone.
Yeah. So we saw an article by Mercola too that said that there is a financial sham that's going on with 5G that could also destroy that. Max, you wanted to say something about that? Let me unmute you. I got you. Go ahead.
Yes, well, the problem with Wi-Fi is not only with the 5G and Wi-Fi, the problem also goes to wire, because even wires give off EMF signals. In fact, Lyme disease, which was first discovered in 1975, first identified in 1975 in Lyme, Connecticut, was first discovered and attributed to the Lyme tick. But, you know, then they had false negatives and false positives. What they don't realize is 1975 was right after they first put the first electric lines in Connecticut. And as the electric lines have been going across the country, Lyme disease has been following. So now, as far as what Mercola had is in 1992, Vice President Gore figured out a solution to the whole EMF thing. Instead of sending electric currents to the lines, you use fiber optics and you send electric light pulses, not electric, but pulses of light through the wires. And you can get exactly the same effect or possibly even better effect than with electricity going through the wires. And at that time, a certain percentage of the income from telephone companies was diverted to put in or to replace the telephone lines with fiber optic cables. And that money, which has been flowing for fiber optics, has been diverted to create 5Gs, or the
I
other
see what you're
Gs too.
saying. Okay,
And
I got it. But
the
we
lawsuit
can't go
is
too
trying
much
to
into
get, hmm?
we
Excuse
can't
me?
go too much into the past and the history because I want to have Theodora and I have a chance to talk about what to do about it now. So if you want to find out
Okay.
more about this financial scam that's going
Well,
on, check out Mercola's article.
What Kennedy is doing is trying to get get 5G all taken out and have it replaced with the fiber optics, which was originally intended. In fact,
Right.
the fiber optic cables that have been installed have been perverted by the electric companies to run Wi-Fi signals, 5G signals through the fiber optics. And they're trying to get rid of the 5G and replace it with fiber optics, which would eliminate the EMF altogether.
Which could be one of the good talking points to use as far as a solution, right, Theodora, when we're talking to city planners and all that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Max. I appreciate it. So we're gonna jump into, and if you want to add in the chat box on the side what type of questions that you would have for Theodora. And Theodora, if you don't mind, I'm just want to like role play with you a little bit on how we would talk to our neighbors and or city planners about, you know, what do we say about 5G? So let's just say I'm your neighbor and you come to visit me. How would you start off in talking about this?
Well, it depends on your neighbor. I mean, there are a couple ways to do it. You know, you could say something, you know, there's been a lot of hype about 5G. I mean, I hear it on the radio. I mean, I'm telling you, I do, right? But you know, there's hundreds of scientists who are calling to halt 5G, and their entire cities, especially in Europe, which have halted it because of health issues. And did you know there's going to be like, what they're talking about is like an antenna, a pole with like a mini cell tower with a big box right in front of our homes. I mean, that's one way to start it if you're in a community that doesn't
So
right now.
they could put this outside of my home?
Oh yes, right.
Without my
right
permission? Without my
in the
permission?
sidewalk, and you will, yes, without your permission. In some places, they're completely taking away any ability to stop it. No public hearing. Like normally in residential communities, at least in my area, you get to have a hearing. A cell tower is going to go up. There's a hearing. Everyone goes to the hearing. There's no.
Yeah, but what if, I mean, they must have like checked this out. I mean, I saw the commercials on the Super Bowl. They're saying that it's really fast and it's going to help firefighters and EMTs and stuff like that. Don't we need this kind of technology?
You know, the International Association of Firefighters actually several years ago put out a resolution that they don't want cell antennas on their stations because of the neurological problems that happened to firefighters in a study. We have that on our website. And they never tested it for safety. In fact, this is a totally new technology. They never tested what we have now for long-term safety. And what we have coming up with 5G will be millimeter waves, higher frequencies, never used all the time, that have been shown to, scientists are warning that bees could be affected even more because the frequencies, well, let me think of what you'd say to your neighbor, but the frequencies could possibly overheat the bees because of their shape compared to the wavelength, which matches. Those are a few key. Oh, also it's used in weaponry, and at high power. It makes your skin feel like it's on fire. It's called the active denial.
Yeah, but they're not using that. They're not using that frequency outside my house, are they?
Yes.
Really?
That frequency, that range of frequencies will be used. Millimeter wave. That exact frequency.
How can they install this without like my permission outside my house?
Because, well, depending on your neighbor, you know, you have to know your
Yeah,
neighbor.
we're role playing, so I'm asking
Yeah.
you, what do
So
people say when,
some people you can say, you know, it's really interesting, but the folks in charge, there's really no one in charge in the United States that is experts in the biology and the health issues related to this. But who is in charge is the FCC, that's former telecom, or they're going to leave and be telecom. And so we kind of got this situation where the people who are regulating, it's like a wolf watching the hen house, depending on
well,
if they go for that, or maybe.
so what are the symptoms that somebody would see if they put this outside of my house? Like what type of symptoms are you talking about?
Well, there's short-term symptoms and long-term symptoms which have been reported, like impacts to sleep. There's a lot of testimony online. You can watch it of kids who've had the tower go up in front of their bedroom windows in line of sight. Their immune system goes down, headaches, research showing increased cancers. Because remember, the antenna is going to be at close range, and they use the same antennas, not all the same, but some of the similar antennas that they put on the tall cell towers, but they're going to be right here at like 13 feet.
But I heard that they have to put them really close together because the waves don't go so far and they don't go through walls. So if they don't go through walls, why do I care about it?
Well, actually, it depends. They're going to be, every company gets to have their own installation. Some companies are using lower frequencies. The ones that are using higher frequencies that we haven't used before are also using the lower ones. You're going to get more of everything we have now, plus the higher ones.
Why does that matter as far as the waves going through the walls, lower frequencies or higher frequencies?
Oh, good question. So the higher frequencies do not as easily go through walls.
Okay, and that's what they're using mostly with 5G, or some?
It's going to be a complete mix.
It's
Low
a mixture.
band, mid band, and high band. But when you walk
Okay,
outside,
but if my son is able to play virtual reality video games, isn't that good? Like, isn't it better for video game playing?
well, a lot of the things that we think we need it for, we actually don't need it for. So virtual reality, which I have concerns about the eyes with virtual reality, be it wired or wireless, but you can have it be wired. So
You can plug in a wire, you mean? You can have it be wired direct?
There are wired virtual reality headsets, actually, that I don't know if they're, I mean, we don't do that, so I don't know much about it, but I know that there are wired headsets that exist. And frankly, I think we should be like asking, companies to make safer technology for our kids.
Yeah, that
like
sounds
video
good.
games,
Are they required to notify me if they're going to put one outside of my home? Are they going to let me know?
Because rights are being stripped away, depending on your local laws, you may not be notified, actually. You may not find out till it goes up in many communities. It depends on where you live.
And you're saying if Verizon and Sprint and T-Mobile and all these guys want to do their own towers, so I could have like 4 or 5 towers outside of my house?
On the block. And there's another thing that really just shows how 5G is not ready to be implemented. You can't measure it adequately. The radiation, the European Parliament had a report that came out, and engineers have written about this in multiple places. You can't adequately even measure what the radiation is going to precisely be in a particular location, because they're using new kinds of antennas with steerable waves where there might be, let's say you have a meter that measures. You hold it up. It might not be getting all the frequencies and the radiation streams that are going through your space. It's not even, we don't even check for compliance. We don't check with cell towers now.
So they're just letting them do whatever they want with this.
that's what industry is trying to do with their state laws and their federal rules. And in some local communities, there are many industry-friendly ordinances that are being passed. Until
So
communities find out.
I've been places where it says that we already have 5G. Like I saw on the Super Bowl, there was a commercial from not Verizon, but some other company, and they said, we have the best 5G coverage, and it was all across the country. So if they already have that, why do they have to put in new cell towers? Is that the same 5G? Yeah, it was T-Mobile. Is that the same 5G that you're talking about right
I'm
now?
trying to understand what's going on with T-Mobile, because they are one of the companies that's using the lower frequencies that go through everything.
Mhm.
But we don't have 5G phones. I mean, I don't think they cost over $1,000. I don't know that many people have 5G phones.
I was in a hotel, and on my phone it said 5G instead of 4G one time.
Right,
And
and this is the
when
most,
I asked them if that was 5G, like the Wi-Fi, they said no, it's just a higher level of 4G. They said it was not the 5G that we're thinking about. Is there a difference?
yeah, so this is really, I don't know why the companies did it this way. It is so confusing. So your router will even say 5G, and you're like, oh, I have 5G, we get this, and I totally get it. So that is the 5 gigahertz, which is a specific frequency that the Wi-Fi is on. It might be 2.45. So your Wi-Fi normally will have 2 antennas, and it's 5 gigahertz. That's different than 5th generation wireless. 5th generation wireless is an engineering, it's a way the waves are engineered so that all the devices can communicate with each other. It's a way they communicate. It's like a language, and it's also the way, like how the data is traveling through space, the speed, the pulse, but it's not 5G on your phone.
So 5G on the phone is different from the 5G that you're talking about having set up outside of our house.
Yes, but at the Super Bowl, as I understand it, they did put 5G, even from what I read, underneath the seats. Now remember that 4G is the backbone of 5G. So I remember watching one piece on this. I don't remember if it was the Wall Street Journal or not, where they said, well, not many people even have a device that can connect with it, but other things actually can. So maybe they had machines talking to other machines using 5G. And that's a big thing that's being promoted, that machine-to-machine communication, like car-to-car communication, or oh gosh, all manner of things.
Well, that's what they're saying. They're saying they're going to be able to communicate. EMTs are going to be able to use drones and communicate with people's homes and find you if you're in an emergency. They're saying that like they're going to need this for emergency, issues.
That's really being used right now, and I think that there is a lot of misleading information being put forward because, how do we have they demonstrated that having video between, like, if I'm in my house and I need 911, we heard in a city council meeting that, oh, everything's going to be on video now, and this is what you have to do, and I'm thinking, well, has that been demonstrated? I mean, don't we just want the person to come to our house? Do we want to be holding a phone in any specific, like, what is the best way to use technology? And has that been adequately researched in terms of its life-saving power? I mean, sometimes you just need the police to come to your house. Sometimes you might need some help being talked through saving a life. But do you need video capacity? Is a phone not enough? I mean, we have to figure that out. I haven't seen any data showing efficacy on this, actually.
Okay, so Molly asks, Maine has a company called Red Zone that advertises it has 5GX. Do you know what the X means? Is this the same thing that we're just talking about right now? Just another marketing name for another frequency of 4G?
I don't know what it is. I know there have been like 5G ready or 5G this and that aren't actually 5G. They're like the pre-5G.
Right. Yeah, Eileen is saying that it's a way to desensitize people, normalize it, familiarize the public with 5G, use the word all over the place before it comes out. And then the other thing that they do is they use the word with the public, but then with the city planners, they use small cells or wireless facilities or Broadcom, right? They don't use the word 5G. So when I email, I'm going to share actually my email if you don't mind now. If anybody else has any questions, right? We're sort of just role playing here. Nobody gets to use my words out of context about, 5G. Okay. I was just asking questions like a devil's advocate. So here's an email that I sent to my city council or city planner it was. And I asked, can you please tell me if our city, first I asked about the addresses of where 5G was planned on being installed. And they came back and said, we don't have any plans to install 5G. And then I was advised to use the word wireless facilities, right? Or small cell installation. So I did that. And they said, they asked, I asked, do you have an ordinance for wireless facilities or small cell installation? And they said, yes. And here is a link to it. I'll look at that in a second. And I asked, will they be allowed to be installed near homes, daycare, schools? And if so, how close? And they say currently wireless facilities can be located in all zones within the city of Mission Viejo. However, the only new applications submitted to the city are for 2 small cell facilities proposed in the commercial highway zone. So that might be the one that I saw. I had one up. I'll have to look through wait, hang on a second. Let me show a picture of that in a second. They can just go up on the top of poles and you just never know. Hang on a second. Let's see. Here we go, is the picture. So I'm just driving to my kid's school and along the road, I see this tower, right? Does that look like a small cell tower to you, Theodora?
It very much could be. I haven't seen one that looked exactly like that recently, but I think that it very much might be. I would check that one out. It does look.
It doesn't look like anything else I've ever seen. There's no wires going to it. It's not a telephone pole, So
they can have all kinds of ways.
Yeah. So just keep your eyes open for things like that. Okay. So here's I'm going to go back to the letter that I sent. So they're saying that they can be located in all zones. So that means that they can be located near daycare centers and schools, right? They're allowed in all zones. So currently they only have 2 applications up. Will they be allowed to install electrical boxes in front yards near the small cells? And if so, how many? And he says there are no plans for electrical boxes for small cell sites in residential zones at this time. It doesn't mean that there won't be, right? It doesn't mean that they're not allowed. So they could be allowed. The city does have, how many companies will be installing their own small cells like Verizon, AT, Sprint, or T-Mobile? And how many will that result in our city? How far apart? And he responds, the city does have 2 applications submitted from AT&T for the installation of small cell sites within the city's jurisdiction. These small cell sites are proposed along Marguerite Parkway, along the sidewalk within the public right-of-way south of the shops. Both applications will go before the Planning Transportation Committee February 10th. I gotta go to that meeting. So you guys gotta have to find this stuff out so that you go to that meeting. If these meetings happen and there's nobody there, it's just they're gonna keep passing them. So these items are planned development permits. If approved, these 2 proposed small cell wireless facilities would utilize 4G for now, right? 5G is not proposed at this time and would require a separate city approval. Doesn't mean that they won't get it. The city has been in discussion with Verizon to add 1 small cell site within city limits. No other carriers have approached us. As stated earlier, the city only has 2 applications. So they're trying to say, it's not a big deal. The 2 small cell sites are proposed approximately 1,700 feet away from each other on Marguerite Parkway. So you see here that you've really got to get down to the nitty gritty with this. And what Theodore, you mentioned back was that there were some questions that you had. Is there a setback for the antennas from homes or buildings? It looks like there's not, but we want to ask the questions to make sure that they respond, right? Sometimes you got to ask the questions just to put it on their radar that we know what is going on. Wouldn't you say that, Theodora?
Oh yeah.
Ask the question so that they know that we know what's going on, okay? Is there a public notification for these small cell installations in all cases? Are they going to tell us about these? And is there a public hearing for these installations? Really important questions. So I hope you guys are taking notes and writing this down, that these are the questions that you need to ask. Is there a setback? That meaning, is there a distance away, right, that these small cells need to be from our homes or buildings? If so, what is that? In some cases, it's 25 feet. Still too close. Is there a public notification for these small cell installations in all cases? Are they going to tell us about it? And is there a public hearing for these installations? Okay, so write these questions down. Let's see. And they want it. Yeah, so Eileen is saying they probably will let people know, but it's in a newspaper announcement. Who reads a newspaper anymore, right? It's ridiculous. Let's see.
Yeah.
So yeah, Eileen is wondering if there's a different term for electrical boxes, right? Like I asked about electrical boxes, do they have a different name for that? So they're using semantics and skirting away from the issue. What do you think about
Street
that?
furniture.
What's that?
You'll hear it termed street furniture, but in the
No.
ordinance, it'll say electrical equipment.
Are you serious? Street furniture?
Oh yeah.
You're not
I'm not kidding you.
joking me.
I'm so not kidding you. The word small cell was invented by the telecommunications company. It means all kinds of things. It doesn't even mean one thing. And then street furniture is a new word.
As if it's a good idea to go sit on it. Like that would really be a good idea, right? To go sit on these electrical boxes. You think that would be healthy?
Right. It makes it more palatable. They also talk about the digital ecosystem. I really like that one too.
The digital ecosystem? What do you mean by that?
Ecosystem. It's like, remember we learned about the ecosystem in school? I mean, I remember middle school, the ecosystem, right? It's like the birds are eaten by the bugs are eaten by the birds that are eaten by the bigger mammals. There's this whole world that we have of the environment. And now they have the digital ecosystem, which is all the things that talk to each other. The smart meters that chatter with us, all the different devices. I think it's we're talking about billions of new interconnected devices. When I started on this, I remember someone saying, the genie's out of the bottle. There's nothing you can do. We're done. It's already here. And I'm like, and now more than ever, it's like, we don't even see but the head, the ponytail of the genie. Like we are just at the beginning of a digital revolution of which we are not even a part of the creation of. It's the amount of devices they're thinking that are going to be communicating with each other is astronomical. It's unprecedented. And the only way to have all these things talk to all these other things and to your phone is to have the highways of the communication, which are these invisible signals from all of these towers connecting, moving data. That's the plan.
So this is the ordinance that he sent me, and I have to be honest, I don't understand a lot of it. I think this is why they get away with what they get away with. There's a lot of information in here that I don't get a lot of it. So do you want to walk us through this a little bit, or just tell us a few things that are really important? And we went through a few of the questions that we talked about earlier. You want to find out, is there an ordinance, right? Can somebody take notes in the chat box for me?
Yeah, and I'm going to put it in the chat box, examples of protective ordinances.
Okay, good. Please do.
Of protective ordinances, and I
You're
also,
providing a link. You're providing a link to that of
yeah, I just
examples.
put the link in, and I also want to get you
So
physician.
hang on a second. So that's something that you want to send to your city planner, or you want to bring with you to a city council meeting and say, this is the type of ordinance that we want to have, right? You want to bring them the solution, correct?
Well, what we did in our town, 5G Crisis, or Americans for Responsible Technology, has a model wireless ordinance. In our case, we actually, the residents got together and have been researching this for a long time and came up with an ordinance that integrates like the best of ordinances around the country. You know,
And you're providing us with that link?
yeah, that one I have to find. The examples of protective ordinances, I'd look at Los Altos, which is really a great one. I'm also putting in, or at least, you know, maintains authority. I also want to put in physicians for safe technology, also has a page on 5G. I wanted to get that in there. So you want to look at, I mean, every locality is different because of state laws and county laws and zoning. So we actually, and this is something people can do, because when I look at an ordinance like that, you know, I'm not a lawyer and I can't adequately evaluate it, but, you know, just looking at it without spending hours on it. And then even then I need to get help. But every person, every mother, father, person who lives needs to have easy to understand information about this ordinance. So what we asked for was a fact sheet. We said, look, how do you even expect, you know, anyone, I mean, even if I understand it, how am I going to even share this with my neighbors? They're going to be like, what? You need to put out what in the world.
Yeah, because what I'm seeing here is that they're talking about radio station antenna. Amateur radio.
This might be an outdated, I mean, you have to, this might be an older ordinance. Yeah. Find out when this was.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering is, are they using, you know, a 40-year-old ordinance for, you know, new technology? Proposed amateur radio station antenna. That's not what we're talking about here.
Well, it might be that I mean, this is long. So, oh wait, it says proposed exemption for small antenna. Wait, what does it say? That looks like, well,
yeah, this is an exemption to the provision of amateur radio station antenna.
Well, that may be an exemption for like a ham radio person. Here, what I was saying was, they have a responsibility. Our elected officials in our cities have a responsibility to put this into English. They need to put it into English for us. So that's what we asked for.
So here's something. It says prohibition of antennas in required yards. No amateur radio station antenna may be located in the required front, side, or rear yard setback areas.
I think that's for a ham radio, for like.
Yeah, but if that's not allowed, why wouldn't 5G not be allowed? Like if they could, you know what I mean? If a amateur radio station is going to be emitting far less radio waves, wouldn't they, than a small cell tower, a 5G tower?
I don't know if the regulation is based on that concept, but I think that it's reasonable to ask that very question. Is if you're not allowing a ham radio, I mean, I would at least, I'd say, wait, it says this, but I think this might be, when was this passed? I would find out when the regulation was passed. And I would ask very specific questions.
Okay.
Is there a setback to the buildings?
Right.
Is there a setback for schools? What is the spacing between they're called nodes, or between the installations? Because if you don't have a spacing requirement, then you could get them wherever industry thinks it's the best place to put them.
Right. They did tell me the current ones are placed 1,750 square feet apart, but they didn't say that that was the rule. They just said that they are being placed 1,750 square feet. I mean, not square feet, but feet apart.
Interesting. Because some communities have provisions that it must be 1,500 foot separate between each one. And some have prohibiting installations on that right of way under certain, that the locality owns. Depends on the city as to what they've done. You can't prohibit service, but service is not necessary. This is future. They're talking about future needs. They're not talking about
current needs,
things that we're using now.
Currently, we have Wi-Fi. What we have works. I want to be clear about that. We don't really need anything else, right?
If they use wires, if we started to use, for a lot of the intense things that we do, data moving around, more wired technology, safer wired technology, then we wouldn't need to have all of this. Everything doesn't need to be wireless.
Right.
If everything's wireless, then they have a problem. How are they going to make it all work? But if we're just reasonable and use, not everything has to be wireless. Like they have what are they? Oh my gosh, like your stove, all the smart things in your home will be connecting with things outside, or everything connected.
Right. Well, this is interesting. This does say that the proposed facility must be 1,500 feet away from any existing facility. And down here, it does say no new support structures may project from the roof of a building. A new freestanding support structure must be a minimum of 10 feet from a building on the same site, unless the building, 10 feet's not great. But that might mean that they can't install it on the house, on somebody's house, right?
I don't know. I think this has to, I have to look at the context of it.
Okay. Anyway, it's just an example
I'm not
of
sure
how convoluted
when this was made, when this was created.
Okay.
That's a good question to ask, is what's the current ordinance for small cell, for wireless facilities? Your person who answered you back said that they're allowed.
Yeah.
Which I found shocking.
Yes.
That they would be allowed in residential areas. Right now, we have a very big setback in our residential areas in our county. And people are fighting to maintain what we have.
And so what do you have, and so what should we ask for? What kind of setback?
What should we ask for? I mean, we believe that it should be that 5G, the rollout and the densification should be halted until there's adequate safety demonstrated. I mean, we've already seen demonstrations of harm, but it should be on them to prove that it's safe. Would be, but your county council people are going to say, well, I can't do that. I hope that there is a city council that starts to do what's happening in Europe. Until then.
So couldn't they pass an ordinance that they will allow this when adequate safety studies have been demonstrated? So they're not blocking it. They're saying we will allow installation of this after adequate studies have been done. Couldn't they do that?
Well, I know that the Citizens Advisory Group, so Washington, D.C. is divided into all of these areas, and they have like citizen, these neighborhood advisories, that they put out a resolution on that. And there have been resolutions that have been passed, some of which we have online. I haven't put any recent ones on, but I'm going to send you Los Altos, because I think Los Altos is a really great
okay, you're
example.
to us. Okay.
And
while you're doing that, April's asking, should we leave AM radios on all the time to upset 5G?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Do you? I don't know that it's going to necessarily upset 5G.
And somebody else asked, what happens if you're caught removing, like, let's just say somebody starts using a 5G cell tower for target practice. What happens? Do they probably get put in jail or fined? What do you think?
Well, what do you think? I mean,
probably, right?
If it's destruction of property, I think that I think the best thing to do is not to have them go up in the first place. It's very hard to get them down.
Yes.
And if it means talking about trees, because, well, of course I care about trees, but I mean, trees are going to be impacted. Can I show you a picture? Let me pull it up. I just want to show people something.
Yeah.
That I think you'll find really interesting. Okay, let me just see if I can share this.
And while you're doing that, Kristen asked what words should be looking out for 5G. So I already mentioned earlier, small cells, small cell. They don't say the word towers. They're trying to get word away from the word towers. They use wireless facilities. They use Broadcom. Those are some that. What's that?
Yeah, broadband or
broadband. Yeah. Yeah,
wireless
broadband,
facilities is the word I've seen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to show you this just to see like what is happening. If you don't have it now, from what we understand, they do want to blanket all of the United States. And this is a community where all of these sites got proposed. You can see this was a few years ago. I mean, this is throughout the neighborhood. In this one area, and we have a couple areas like that. This is an example of a map that by citizens saying, hey, we want this information online. Here's our map. Before, we didn't have this map. When that got proposed, these communities, people got organized, packed hearing rooms. There's another example in Germantown. And people woke up to holes being dug in their front yard, poles being put in with the metal thing. They haven't put all the antennas up because everyone got organized. They actually put a pause on this. But I just wanted to show you what we're talking about.
Where is this? What town is this?
This is in Montgomery County, Maryland.
Oh,
This is where I am.
And then Kristen wants to know what website is this? It's montgomerycountymd.gov is what I saw.
Oh, here, I'm gonna put it in the chat because the way I see it, if there's a community that doesn't have this, they really should. Every locality should have transparency in these applications. And that's like step one, transparency. Where they
we ask them for a map of locations. We ask our city to provide a map.
Why don't we have a map? Why don't we know where they are? I can assure you that when your neighbors see where they're being proposed and that this is real, you know, they go, oh, is one coming here? You know, what?
Yeah, well, and even if you don't have that yet, right? Like, so the people in Mission Viejo is telling me we don't have that yet. But showing them a screenshot of that map in Germantown and Montgomery is like, look, this is what is happening across the country. This is what is likely to be proposed right here. Right. This is what, unless we speak up, right? And once those poles are dug and they're being installed, it's going to be much more difficult to stop this. So here's an example, right? You can screenshot it and print out a picture of this is what's happening in other cities. Yeah.
The other thing to remember is that the insurance companies have rated 5G as off the hook, a high emerging risk. That the health issues may come with a long latency. This is in a Swiss Re report that just came out on 5G. There have been many reports written in the past about cell tower radiation and cell phone radiation, and it's uninsurable. So insurance companies won't insure for damages because the risk is so high. And not only that, but the companies that are putting this out actually inform their shareholders that there is a potential risk and an impact to the financial state of the company because of the lawsuit. There could be damages down the road. There could be changes in regulations that could impact them financially, but yet we're not warned. The people living near their equipment, which is polluting the air with this new invisible pollutant, are not being warned.
Right.
And I can send you a link. We actually have on our website a whole section on on this, where you can pull up like what Verizon says, what Crown Castle says.
So Kristen was asking, was that map created by the city where the proposed location?
Yes.
Okay, it was.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody asked, well, what good are the maps if the public doesn't realize the harm? Well, my response to that is that it's up to you to tell the public the harm. It's up to you to go walk around to your neighborhood, which is, I did this the other day. It took half an hour or something. I printed out 40 copies of the letter from the 5G crisis and just walked around my neighborhood and put them underneath my neighbors' doors. So of course I have a lot more neighbors to do, but it's up to us to tell them about the harms. They're not going to find out probably any other way. So Kristen asked, could you sue the city because of the health issues caused by them?
Well, that is a really good question, because we believe that there will be many lawsuits. And one thing you can raise is this issue of who is liable, because a lot of the telecom companies have actually put into their agreements with cities that they are not liable. So then who is? The city. So does that make sense? And it would be
That's a good question to ask your city planner, right? Who is liable?
Yeah, who is liable? And you know, our county has not answered that question to me. I've raised it in hearings, I've raised it in many meetings, and they never can really get back to me. We actually put up a piece on this by some lawyers, which I think you'll find extremely useful.
Frankie, I'm not sure about your statement about you can't sue the government if they don't consent to be sued. You have to sue the people responsible, because you know, the Center for Biological Diversity did sue the EPA regarding glyphosate and, you know, endangered species. So anybody can file a lawsuit for anything. You can look at somebody funny and they can, you know, file a lawsuit on you, but they have to prove that you know, are intentionally harming them, or that you're intentionally slandering them, or whatever. They have to prove something. And keep in mind that when people file lawsuits, there's discovery on both sides. So look what happened with Monsanto in that discovery process. They were able to get all kinds of goods on them because of the discovery process. So when people get worried about somebody suing them, like, oh, you know, Verizon's going to sue me because I put out a meme. No, that doesn't happen, because Verizon doesn't want to go through the discovery process of a lawsuit. They don't want to sue. People are not as lawsuit happy as we think they are, because there's discovery process on both sides. And that is, I've been through it. When we sued a company for glyphosate in their granola bars, it was a huge pain in the butt. They asked me for every single article and email that I have ever sent about glyphosate and oats, right? It was hours and hours and hours of work to go through all of that. So it's not like hunky dory to sue somebody, and people don't do that unless they really feel like it's going to benefit them. So, yeah, and who can afford to go around suing for this stuff, right? So you've got to find somebody that's willing to do that. Oh, April's meeting, you can't sue the vaccine manufacturers. That's right. Yeah. So there are laws that have been put into place where you can't sue, you know, certain officials. Right now we're talking about 5G. By the way, somebody mentioned Hawaii, and that vote is coming up very soon. If it's in a few days or next week, I just posted about it. So if you have any friends in Hawaii, please put them on alert about this and get them to go to their city council, because they're voting about that. Okay.
On their state bill, a state bill on this?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, that's really important.
Yes, yeah, it's going up. There's being a vote for all of Hawaii, and I just posted about it. I think I posted, yeah, and here in Costa Mesa, it's the first one in Orange County where they're going to be voting tomorrow night in Costa Mesa on 5G. So I plan to go.
Small cells on an ordinance?
Yeah, small cell ordinance in Costa Mesa.
You
so
know,
everybody is looking at that.
I put up here something interesting. So insurance policies won't insure, generally electromagnetic fields are excluded. And in the city of Ann Arbor, I found a policy that said that not only is it excluded, and by the way, it's defined as a pollutant, but also they exclude exclude paying for the defense, any supervision, instruction, recommendation, warning, or advice given or which should have been given in connection. And I wonder about that phrase, or should have been given, because we're not being advised or instructed with the full story. And yet and that's why it's really important to get the research and get the science and get this information to your policy makers on record, officially on record, so they cannot say that they were not informed.
Yeah, so you guys, you don't want to have conversations over the phone with your city planners about this. You want to have emails back and forth so you have stuff in writing, right?
Yeah, and official testimony. And talk about, not just the health issues, but also all of the other issues related to 5G, like property devaluation, of which we have an entire page on, or how ugly they are, or impacts to birds and bees, which will be really in close range, if not perched on top of these. If I'm an antenna on top of the site, I mean, they are getting levels which are beyond FCC limits. Wildlife.
And has anybody put animals next to 5G and shown a detrimental health impact from them being, I mean, there's been scientific studies, right? But has anybody put animals near a 5G cell tower out in a neighborhood?
Well, in terms of what is the research on 5G modulation itself, when they've looked at different pieces of it, like the frequencies of 5G are going to be this whole range, but the higher frequencies that have never been used before, there was a study, there's actually 2 published pieces on this, that looked at insects and the higher frequencies. And they found that they absorb up to 370 times more, 370 times more rate of absorption than when the frequencies were lower. And they are warning that this could impact the animal in terms of the insect. Bees, they actually looked at 5 insects, including the western honeybee. And they specifically looked at this question. I can even pull that up a picture for you to see what I'm talking about. Did I talk about this last time?
I don't remember the honeybee one, you talking about that. I just want to acknowledge it's 6:29. It's been a long meeting. I appreciate everybody being on, but go ahead. You want to show that picture real quick so that we have something. I mean, we could talk about this all night, but I want to make sure to honor your time.
Okay, I just have to find it, so it's going to take me.
Okay.
Let's a second. Are there other? I have to find it right now. So,
So April asked about if there's any products to help in our homes that help with Wi-Fi. So there are products that where they have stated that they can alter the waves to make them not as impactful to human health. And I'm not going to testify to that because I haven't experienced it, but there are several companies out there that have stated that. But I want to be clear that there haven't been any products shown to prevent harm from 5G because it is such a high frequency, and there's just nothing out there that that shows that they can actually do that. The only way to stop it is to stop it from being installed. So that's why we're having these conversations, is to empower you to have the information that you need to be able to have these conversations with your neighbors and with your city planners so that you can stop it from being installed altogether.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things you can do in your home to reduce your exposure by swapping out technology for safer options. And we have that on our site, and I'll put the list up, but this has to be even, we really need like a systematic way of researching the various products that exist. And there's so many on the market, and I would caution people to, it's just on that issue, because how do we know what, we don't have any, because the government isn't even acknowledging this is an issue. We don't have any way of even, comparing products, or are they even working long-term? Like,
right.
we don't even know. So I wanted to show you this though about the bees, because even if you have some sort of product that I don't know if it will work or not, but you know, industry did patent many years ago. There are patents about how to make wireless safer. That's a whole side conversation. I just want to show you this on the bees. This was looking at the bees with different frequencies, and the colors represent the different rates of absorption. So the highest rate being white or yellow, then it goes to orange, then to red, then purple, then blue. And you can see at the 2 gigahertz compared to that 24 gigahertz compared to the 120 gigahertz, the difference in looking at the model of the bee. So there's research that has shown impacts to honey, and from the frequencies we have now to honey making to chemical changes in the bees, having them have a stress response. In birds, there's research that has found impacts to their reproduction and to their health. So there's no lack of research actually on bees and birds and trees.
So is this showing the more blue that we're looking at, the more they're absorbing the radio frequency?
No, the yellow and orange and red.
Okay, so the yellow and orange and red show greater absorption of the radio frequencies. So 24 looks pretty darn harmful. Most of our cell phones are more around 300 though, aren't they?
There's a range from below this, so to gigahertz, but even lower than this actually. Lower than what you're seeing here. In the study, they have a variety of frequencies. We just pulled out 3 to show some examples because 5G is going to be using, I think, around 3 gigahertz and then in the 20s. And then the US government has already allocated higher frequencies for 7G. So we're talking about 5G, but they're already looking at higher and higher frequencies.
7G. Okay, so 5G is more in between 3 and 24 gigahertz, or is it megahertz? What?
Well, that's going to be they're going to be using a megahertz. I'm sorry, from before. They're going to be using from megahertz all the way to gigahertz. So the frequencies we have now: low band, mid band, and high band, depending on the company. But remember, the companies that even use the higher frequencies are also going to be using the lower frequencies. It's going to be more.
So what we're looking at is around this B that's in the middle, around the 24 gigahertz is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the higher frequencies, yeah, that are going to be used, that they're talking about now.
All right. Well, there's a wealth of information that we could talk about all night. And if you want more information, go to ehtrust.org. That's Theodora's page. There's also 5G Crisis and Americans for Responsible Technology. There's a lot of information out there. Please do take action. That's the purpose for this call. It is to, yes, it looks like it does occur as a nightmare. We do not want these cell towers installed all over our homes, and I mean, not all over our neighborhoods. And the fact is, though, is that there are places, cities, you said, you started off this call, you said 142 cities in Italy have stopped this, right?
They have issued resolutions calling to halt 5G. And they're like in Greece and in different cities, they've actually, like Kalamata, Greece, I'll just give you an example. They were a test city for 5G. And there was this, you could watch the videos where they were with fanfare. They were like, we're having this 5G. This is so exciting. Best technology coming to our city. And then several months later, once the citizens got educated and the residents understood what was going on, they packed the room and have now severed that the
agreement contract.
That they had. And you can watch that online too. It's all in Greek, but it's happening.
What is the name of that town?
Kalamata, like the olives.
Oh, Kalamata. Okay. Yeah, leave our olives alone.
We have a page. I'm going to put a few things in the link. because it's really important to take a look at. So one, I wanted to put scientific appeals, but then and on the page I just put in has letters from scientists, but now I'm going to show you the page on international actions, which I need to update on Italy. I just haven't had a chance, but this is on international actions. And you can also see the protests that have been happening around the world just last week and the week before.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So the point is that you can take action, and that we can delay or stop 5G. The point is that nobody else is going to do this for us. We really need to be the ones to go to the city council meetings, to speak up, to send those emails to your city planners and find out what are their current ordinances. Has there been an ordinance issued? We must be the ones to do this. Do not think that your neighbor is going to do this for us, for you. It just doesn't work like that, just to wait for somebody else to do something about this. And once these things are installed, it's going to be very, very difficult to reverse. We really do need to speak up about this and not wait for lawsuits to pass, right? Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Frankie and Ann and everybody, Eileen and Theodora, especially. We want to acknowledge you for your commitment and your dedication, your time, your energy that you're spending on this. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the things that nobody will never know that you have done on behalf of so many people, you know, to bring this issue out there. Like, there's so many things we can't even imagine, I'm sure, that you're doing that we don't know that you're doing. And I just want to thank you very much for bringing this issue to our awareness. And go out there, guys, and send those emails and gather your friends and neighbors. The letters are really easy to print out on 5gcrisis.com. And I'm sure you have letters. Do you have letters on EHTrust too? .org?
You know, we have letters from scientists, which you can print out and use in your testimony. So on the scientist letters, I put the link there. Letters from scientists all over the world that have written to, like we just had Guernsey, all the letters from Guernsey put up. And you can use those. You can quote from those. When you give testimony, a lot of people say, oh, what do I say? I don't know what to say. Take one of those letters and say, I'm going to quote this scientist, and let me read to you some of what this scientist says. And there you got it.
Yes, yeah, that's a great point. You don't need to know what to say. There's all the information out there. Right. All you need to do is have the courage to get up and say it in front of your city council. That's all you need to do, is have the willingness to read out loud. If you can read and you can speak, you can do this. Right? Just need to be willing. Yeah.
Well, I had never spoken to a city council in my life before this issue. This and actually crumb rubber in playgrounds is what brought me to the city council many years ago. So, you know,
that's another topic, the rubber that's being used in playgrounds. Getting industrial pollutants into our kids, which I have tested them and found those high levels of industrial pollutants in our kids. Yeah, okay. So we really appreciate you guys. Thank you, Theodora. It was a fantastic call. Thank you for going over so much. It's so much important information. We will put this recording out there, and we hope people will take the steps that you went through, and that they will practice talking about 5G with their friends or with their family members, and then go out there and go to your neighbors. We got a weekend coming up. Go spend an hour walking your dog and talking to your neighbors. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.